Mafia boss found a poor waitress hanging from his roof. What happened next is a storm, a scream, and a rescue that should have ended there. But it doesn't. The mafia boss drags the poor waitress to safety and finds a message carved into steel. Pay what you owe. She swears she owes nothing until a strange metal key appears and killers show up at dawn. Forced inside his world, she sees what he really is, a monster to everyone else, strangely gentle to her. Then the twist hits. Someone powerful has been paying her family's bills in secret and wants her back at any cost. A traitor stands at the boss's side, a father hides behind a gun, a ledger could burn the city. When the roof becomes a battlefield again, one choice decides everything. Did fate put her on his roof? Or a plan? And when love is the only safe place, who pays the final price? The rain hammered against Corvin's face as he pulled Talia over the parapet, her body trembling against his chest. Water streamed down her pale face, dark hair plastered to her skin. His quick assessment noted no serious injuries beyond rope burns on her wrists and scratches from the struggle. Easy, he murmured, keeping one arm around her while scanning the rooftop. The security lights cast harsh shadows across the wet concrete, transforming innocent mechanical units into potential hiding spots. Can you stand? Talia nodded, though her legs shook as she found her footing. I'm okay. Her voice was steadier than he expected, given the circumstances. When she tried to step away, he tightened his grip. Stay close. He shrugged out of his jacket, draping it over her shoulders. The expensive wool was soaked through, but it would help with the shock. Thunder cracked overhead as he examined the warning carved into the metal rail. Pay what you owe. The letters were crude but deliberate, likely done with a knife tip. His security team burst through the roof access door, weapons drawn. Clear the perimeter, he ordered. Full sweep of every floor, check the cameras. They moved with practiced efficiency, breaking into pairs to secure the area. Corvin studied the frayed maintenance cable still swaying in the wind. Tell me everything you remember. I was taking out trash behind the diner after my shift. Talia wrapped his jacket tighter around herself. Someone grabbed me from behind. They put something over my head. Felt like a bag. I tried to fight, but... She touched her wrists where the rope had cut in. When I came to, I was hanging there. The rope work was distinctive, complex knots favored by outfit enforcers. Corvin had seen them enough times to recognize the signature, but the outfit targeting a waitress over debts made no sense. They dealt in millions, not missed rent payments. You're sure you don't owe anyone money? Not just banks, loans, gambling, anything off the books? No. Talia met his gaze directly despite her fear. I work doubles to make rent. I don't gamble or do drugs. The only debt I have is $300 to my landlord, and he's a jerk, but he's not the throwing people off buildings type. Lightning flashed, illuminating her face. There was something familiar about her features that nagged at him, but he couldn't place it. He filed the observation away for later. Sir. One of his men approached, holstering his weapon. No signs of forced entry. Security cameras showed interference for 8 minutes around midnight. Just static. Whoever did this knew our systems. Corvin's jaw tightened. The outfit had resources, but bypassing his security required inside knowledge. Lock down the elevators. No one in or out without my authorization. He guided Talia toward the roof access. You're staying here until we sort this out. Wait, what? She tried to pull away, but his grip was iron. I have work tomorrow. My cat needs feeding. You can't keep me here. I can, and I will. His tone left no room for argument. Someone went to considerable effort to leave you on my roof with a message. Until I know why, you're under my protection. The elevator ride down to the penthouse level was tense. Talia stood as far from him as the small space allowed, though that wasn't far. She was doing an admirable job hiding her fear, but Corvin could see it in the tight line of her shoulders, the way her fingers twisted in his jacket sleeves. His penthouse occupied the entire top floor. 10,000 square feet of luxury that doubled as a fortress. The security panel by the door showed all systems active, no breaches detected. Still, he conducted a room-by-room sweep while Talia waited in the foyer, leaving wet footprints on the marble. The guest suite is through there. He indicated a hallway. You'll find dry clothes in the closet. Bathroom has everything you need. When she hesitated, he added, "The sooner you get warm and dry, the sooner we can figure this out." "And then I can go home?" "We'll discuss it after you've changed." He wasn't making promises he might not keep. "Go. I need to make some calls." Talia looked like she wanted to argue, but another violent shiver changed her mind. She disappeared down the hall, his jacket still wrapped around her like armor. Corvin watched the security feeds while his team reported in. No intruders found, no suspicious vehicles, nothing on the cameras except that convenient block of static. The outfit was sending a message, but the target made no sense. A random waitress with no connections to their world. His phone buzzed with an update from his intelligence team. They'd started running background checks the moment he'd radioed down from the roof. He opened the file, scanning Talia's history, and froze. Thunder rolled outside as he processed the information. Perhaps this wasn't as random as it appeared. The penthouse doors sealed with a soft click, security protocols engaging. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, lightning still flickered across the city skyline. Somewhere out there, someone had gone to elaborate lengths to ensure Talia Quinn ended up in his custody. He intended to find out why. His security chief's voice crackled over the intercom. "Building's clear, boss. No signs of the intruders. Want us to expand the search?" "No." Corvin's eyes went to the hallway where Talia had disappeared. "Maintain current protocols. No one in or out." The storm raged on outside, but his mind was already racing through implications, contingencies, and the growing certainty that this night's events were just the beginning of something much larger. "Hold still." Corvin's touch was surprisingly gentle as he dabbed antiseptic on her raw wrists. "These aren't deep, but we need to prevent infection." Talia sat rigid on the edge of his leather sofa, a plush towel draped around her shoulders. The penthouse was all clean lines and dark wood, more like a CEO's office than a home. Rain still lashed the floor-to-ceiling windows, but at least in here she was warm. "We need to call the police." Her voice shook less than before. "This is attempted murder." "No police." He wrapped gauze around her right wrist with practiced efficiency. "That warning on my roof makes this syndicate business. You bring in uniforms, you'll disappear within 24 hours. "That's insane. I'm a waitress, not some mob." She trailed off as his expression darkened. "The knots they used." He secured the bandage. "That's an outfit signature, professional work. They wanted you found here, specifically." "I don't know anything about the outfit or signatures or—" Her hands clenched. "Look, someone grabbed me behind my building. Next thing I knew, I was dangling 40 stories up. That's all I know." Corvin studied her face, searching for deception. Finding none, he moved to her other wrist. "Phone." "What?" "Your phone. I need it." She hesitated, then dug it from her damp apron pocket. As she handed it over, his eyes caught on the badge pinned there. Miller's Diner, in faded red letters, one corner chipped. He pocketed her phone and stood towering over her. "That diner on 12th?" "Yeah, night shift." She pulled the towel tighter. "I need to get back. My shift starts at—" "You're not going anywhere." His tone was final. "Someone went through considerable trouble to put you on my roof. Until I know why, you stay here where it's safe. You can't just keep me prisoner." She bolted for the door, but he was faster, blocking her path with his body. "I can and I will." His voice softened slightly. "This isn't a game, Talia. The people who did this, they don't leave loose ends." She glared up at him, fists clenched. "So what? I'm supposed to trust the guy holding me captive?" "You're supposed to trust the guy who pulled you off that cable." He nodded to one of his men. "Show Ms. Quinn to the guest suite. Post a guard." The security man stepped forward, but Talia held her ground. "I need to text my landlord at least. He's already threatening eviction." Corvin considered, then handed back her phone. "Make it brief." She typed quickly. "Sorry, family emergency. Back by morning. We'll have rent then." "Satisfied?" She passed the phone back. He checked the message, then nodded to his man. Get her settled. The guest suite was larger than her entire apartment, with a king bed and private bath. Once alone, she slipped the phone she'd palmed under her pillow. They'd missed her backup, an old flip phone in her sock. Meanwhile, Corvin paced his office, phone to his ear. I need everything on Talia Quinn. Employment records, financials, family connections, especially debts. His fixer was efficient. Within an hour, the report came back. 23, orphaned at 16, worked various service jobs since. Current employment at Miller's Diner verified. No criminal record. No significant debts beyond typical cards and rent. Clean. Too clean. The outfit didn't waste resources on random targets. They'd disabled his security, used their signature knots, left a warning about debts. But the target had no connections to their world. He pulled up the diner's location on his screens. Busy area, heavy foot traffic. Good sightlines for surveillance. He'd have his team pull camera footage, track her routine. The storm was fading when his security chief called. Boss, maintenance lights are cycling on. Standard pre-dawn check. Corvin checked the time. 4:47 a.m. Keep watch positions, I want... An alert flashed on his monitor. Motion in the guest wing hallway. The camera feed showed Talia creeping toward the elevator, shoes in hand. He had to admire her nerve, even as he moved to intercept. She'd waited for the maintenance cycle, knowing it might mask her movement. Smart, but not smart enough. His finger hit the elevator lockdown before she reached it. Let her try. She'd find every exit sealed. The outfit had chosen his building for a reason. Once those doors closed, nothing moved without his permission. Rain still drummed against the windows, softer now. Dawn would break soon, bringing questions that needed answers. Why his building? Why her? The warning about debts was clearly meant for him, but through her, which meant somewhere in Talia Quinn's past was a connection she didn't know about, one that made her valuable enough for the outfit to use as leverage. He pulled up her file again, studying the gaps. Orphaned at 16, but the details were sparse. No father listed on her birth certificate. Mother's death ruled accidental, but the investigator's notes hinted at doubts. College applications started but never completed. A life carefully constructed to seem ordinary. The elevator's call button lit up, then went dark as she discovered the lockdown. He watched her shoulders slump on the camera feed. When she turned back toward the guest suite, her expression was a mix of frustration and fear that tugged at something in his chest. She was scared, but not broken. Trapped, but still. Fighting. And somewhere in her past was a secret worth killing for. The maintenance lights continued their program sequence, casting shifting shadows through the hallway as Talia made her way back to her room. She'd try again. He was counting on it. Each attempt would tell him more about how she thought, how she solved problems. He needed those insights. Because when the outfit made their next move, and they would, understanding her might be the key to keeping them both alive. The elevator chimed softly at 5:40 a.m. Talia stepped forward, eager for escape, when Corvin's arm shot across her chest. The doors parted to reveal a man in a gray maintenance vest, his hand already rising with a sleek pistol topped by a suppressor. Corvin moved like liquid violence. He yanked Talia backward so hard her feet left the ground, then slammed into the gunman with brutal precision. The attacker's head cracked against the elevator wall. In the confined space, their struggle was intimate and vicious. Corvin trapped the man's gun hand and twisted, the sharp snap of breaking bone punctuated by a strangled scream. The weapon clattered to the carpet. The would-be killer wrenched free, cradling his ruined wrist. He bolted down the hallway toward the service stairs, leaving behind only the echo of pounding footsteps and a single brass casing that had fallen from his pocket. Corvin scooped it up, studying the custom stamp pressed into the metal before tucking it away. Talia's legs gave out. She slid down the wall, her breath coming in sharp gasps. The violence she'd just witnessed wasn't the sanitized kind from movies. It was efficient, brutal, and absolutely real. So was the man who'd unleashed it to protect her. I can't, her voice cracked. I can't go home, can I? No. Corvin crouched beside her, his movements controlled again, contained. You can't go to work either. Not until we understand why they want you. She pressed her palms against her eyes, trying to stop the trembling. This is insane. I'm nobody. I serve coffee and eggs to truckers. I can barely make rent. About that. Corvin pulled out his phone, showing her a screen of text messages. The burner phone you hid in your sock. My team traced the number you've been texting your landlord. Heat flooded her face. Of course they'd found it. I just needed... The building's owned through a series of shell companies. The trail ends at a holding corporation with ties to the Kingsley outfit. His eyes were sharp, assessing. The same family whose signature knots were used to bind you. The same people who just tried to kill you. That's impossible. But even as she said it, something nagged at her memory. Unless... Last week. Late shift at the diner. She wrapped her arms around herself, remembering. These men came in around 2 a.m., expensive suits, wrong crowd for Millers. They sat in my section but barely ordered anything. Just coffee, watching the door like they were waiting for someone. Corvin's expression hardened. Did they speak to you? One of them asked if I'd worked there long. If I knew the regulars. She shrugged. Normal customer stuff, but something felt off. They left a $100 tip on a $20 tab. What else? The next day, this guy shows up saying he's the new building manager, offering to work with me on the late rent if I'd keep an eye out for suspicious activity in the neighborhood. She met Corvin's gaze. I said no. He nodded slowly. They were feeling you out, testing whether you'd be useful. For what? Instead of answering, he stood and offered his hand. Let's get some coffee. Real coffee, not diner sludge. You can tell me everything from the beginning. She let him pull her up, noticing how his touch gentled once she was steady. The same hands that had broken a man's wrist now curved carefully around her elbow, guiding her toward his kitchen as the first gray light of dawn seeped through the windows. The kitchen was all gleaming steel and dark stone, clearly designed for someone who appreciated quality but rarely cooked. Corvin moved with practiced efficiency, grinding beans and measuring water into what looked like a professional-grade coffee maker. Talia perched on a bar stool, watching him work. The adrenaline crash was hitting hard, making everything feel slightly surreal. Here she was, in a crime boss's kitchen at dawn, after nearly being killed twice in one night. Her entire life had shattered in the space of hours. You do this often? She asked. Make coffee for people the mob's trying to murder? His mouth quirked slightly as he set 2 matte black mugs on the counter. You'd be surprised how many conversations in my life involve coffee and violence. Great. That's really reassuring. The coffee maker hummed, releasing rich aromatics that made her stomach growl. She hadn't eaten since her shift yesterday. God, was that only yesterday? Everything before the rooftop felt like another lifetime. Corvin leaned against the counter, studying her with those intense eyes. Tell me about your parents. Not much to tell. Never knew my dad. Mom worked retail, died in a car crash when I was 16. The familiar words felt hollow now, pieces of a puzzle she hadn't known she was part of. And after? Foster care until I aged out. Worked whatever jobs I could get. Started at Miller's 2 years ago. She wrapped her hands around the warm mug he placed in front of her. Normal, boring life until people started throwing me off buildings. The coffee was perfect, dark and complex without bitterness. She took another sip, watching dawn paint the sky in shades of pearl and rose. In this quiet moment, she could almost pretend last night hadn't happened. But the rope burns on her wrists still stung, and somewhere in the building, a man with a broken wrist was reporting back to people who wanted her dead. Start at the beginning, Corvin said softly. Every detail. You can remember. The customers at the diner, the new building manager, anyone who seemed out of place. He pulled out his phone, ready to take notes. The answer's there somewhere. We just have to find it. The steam from her coffee curled like question marks in the dawn light. Talia traced the rim of her mug, organizing scattered memories into something coherent. It was just past 2, like I said. But before those suit guys showed up, there were these other 2 men. She frowned. Construction workers, maybe? Heavy boots, safety vests? They were arguing about insurance, but not like normal insurance. Corvin's fingers stilled on his phone. What exactly did they say? One kept saying the ledgers had to match or someone named Marcus would notice. The other one said insurance wouldn't cover what was coming. She shook her head. It didn't make sense, but they were getting loud enough that I almost called Jimmy, our cook, to come out front. Then what happened? Gunshots outside. 3, maybe 4. Everyone hit the floor. Her hands trembled slightly. When I got up, both guys were gone, left their coffee half finished. But under the sugar caddy? She reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a small black object, matte and unremarkable. I found this. Corvin went completely still. He set his coffee down with deliberate care and held out his hand. May I? She dropped the fob into his palm. I was going to pawn it if rent got tight. Looks expensive. It's priceless, he said quietly. And it explains everything. He turned the fob over, examining it from every angle. This is a syndicate vault key, high-level encryption, completely unmarked, and not one of mine. Vault key, like for a bank? Something like that. He pulled out his phone again, this time dialing instead of texting. Marco? Need you at the penthouse. Bring your cold kit. Yes, now. He ended the call and fixed Talia with an intent look. We need to move. This penthouse is too exposed and they know you're here. Move where? Somewhere safer. Somewhere they won't look. He was already moving, grabbing a secured laptop and various devices she couldn't identify. Pack whatever's in your guest room. We leave in 10 minutes. The next hour passed in a blur of efficient activity. Corvin's hacker arrived, a lanky guy with thick glasses who took one look at the fob and whispered, "Holy shit," before setting up what looked like a miniature supercomputer. Corvin himself moved through the penthouse with precise purpose, gathering supplies and making calls in a low, controlled voice. Talia stood in the guest room, staring at her pathetic pile of belongings, wet clothes from last night, her apron, her hidden phone. Everything else she owned was back in her apartment, an apartment she apparently couldn't return to. Ready? Corvin appeared in the doorway, carrying a sleek duffel bag. Do I have a choice? His expression softened slightly. Always. But right now, your choices are limited to ways of staying alive. The elevator ride down was tense, both of them watching the numbers tick lower. This time, no assassins waited when the doors opened. Instead, a black SUV with tinted windows idled in the underground garage, engine running. Rain still fell outside, creating sheets of gray that turned the city into a watercolor blur. Talia pressed her forehead against the cool glass, watching droplets race down the window as Corvin navigated through morning traffic. They drove for maybe 20 minutes, taking random turns that she suspected were meant to shake any tail. Finally, they pulled up to a brownstone in a quiet neighborhood. Nothing marked it as special, just another well-maintained building on a tree-lined street. But Corvin's shoulders relaxed fractionally as he killed the engine. Home sweet home, he muttered, more to himself than her. At least for now. Inside, the brownstone was a study in contrasts. The furniture was minimal but expensive, the security system cutting edge. One bathroom, recently updated. A kitchen that actually looked used, unlike the showpiece in his penthouse. And bedrooms. She counted 2, but one was up a narrow flight of stairs. Main floor bedroom's yours, Corvin said, setting down his bag. I'll take upstairs. You don't have to. Yes, I do. His tone brooked no argument. You need quick access to exits. I need high ground and sight lines. He moved to the kitchen with the same efficiency she'd noticed in the penthouse, but here it felt different, more natural. He pulled eggs and butter from the fridge, grabbed a pan from a hook above the island. Hungry? Her stomach answered before she could, growling loudly. He almost smiled. Sit. This won't take long. She perched on a bar stool, watching as he cracked eggs with one hand, spread them thin across the pan like a crepe. There was something mechanical about his movements, learned through repetition rather than joy. Where'd you learn to cook eggs like that? She asked. Prison. He didn't look up from the pan. Maximum protein, minimum resources. You learn to be efficient. The word hung between them. Prison. Not what she'd expected from someone who owned penthouses and vault keys. She filed it away with everything else she was learning about Corvin Hale, his careful hands, his tactical mind, the way he moved through space like he was always ready for a fight. He slid a plate in front of her, eggs folded neat and tight, seasoned simply. Eat. We need to talk security protocols once Marco calls with the decrypt results. Outside, the rain continued to fall, drawing gray curtains across the windows. Talia cut into her eggs, watching steam rise from the perfect fold. Somewhere in the city, people were looking for her, for the key she'd unwittingly carried for a week. But here in this kitchen, with Corvin moving with prison-learned precision and eggs that tasted better than they had any right to, she felt something close, to safe. She didn't want to examine why that was, or what it meant that the most dangerous man she'd ever met was now her best chance at survival. For now, she would eat her eggs and watch the rain and try not to think about how completely her world had changed in the space of one storm-dark night. Evening settled over the brownstone like a heavy blanket, bringing with it the kind of exhaustion that seeps into bones. Talia stood in the bathroom, staring at the old brass lock that refused to catch properly. Steam curled around her shoulders from the shower's spray. "I'm leaving it cracked," she called out, hating the tremor in her voice. "Copy that." Corvin's reply came from just outside, followed by the soft thud of his back hitting the wall. She could picture him there, one knee bent, attention split between the hallway and the bathroom door. The water pressure was better than her apartments ever had been. She tried not to think about her place, about the life she'd left behind less than 24 hours ago. Instead, she focused on washing away the remnants of rope burns and rain. When she emerged wrapped in a borrowed robe, Corvin was exactly where she'd imagined, his tall frame propped against the wall. His eyes did a quick sweep, checking for threats, she realized, not looking at her, before he straightened. "Kitchen's stocked," he said. "You should eat something." They moved through the space like wary dancers, establishing careful orbits. Talia found herself studying his hands as he made coffee, scarred knuckles, precise movements. One scar in particular ran deep across his right hand. "Prison?" she asked, nodding toward it. His mouth tightened. "Earlier, learned about loyalty from some friends of my father. Lesson stuck." She traced the edge of her mug. "My mother died when I was 19. Cancer. Left me with enough medical debt to drown in, but the collectors stopped calling 6 months ago. I thought I was finally clear." "Debt doesn't just disappear," Corvin said quietly. "Someone bought it. Question is why." His phone buzzed. The message made his jaw clench. "Marco can't crack the key's encryption. Says it's got fail-safes that trigger if you force it. Professional work." Thunder rolled outside, an echo of last night's storm. Talia wrapped her arms around herself, remembering wind and rain and terror on the roof. Had it really been only 24 hours? Corvin moved through the brownstone with methodical precision, checking locks and sight lines. "We need a rotation for tonight. I'll take first watch. You get some sleep in the main floor bedroom, easier escape routes. What about you?" "I'll sleep when my men relieve me. No windows open, no lights near glass. Stay away from external walls when possible." The instructions should have scared her more. Instead, she found herself watching the way he moved, the careful balance of each step. He'd survived prison, survived whatever had marked his hands, survived long enough to build an empire. Now he was using all that hard-won knowledge to keep her alive. "Why are you helping me?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. He paused, considering. "Because someone put you on my roof with my enemy's signature on your bonds. Because you're caught in something bigger than yourself. Because—" The fire alarm's shriek cut through the air like a knife. Corvin's head snapped up, nostrils flaring. "Gun oil!" he breathed. Then, voice sharp with urgency, "Down!" The window exploded inward as Talia dropped. Glass rained down, followed by the crack of a bullet tearing through kitchen tile. The fruit bowl shattered, sending apples rolling across the floor. Corvin's body slammed into hers, driving them both toward the stairwell. The concrete walls felt solid against her back as sprinklers sputtered to life overhead. Through the wailing alarms, she heard the pop, pop, pop of return fire from Corvin's men outside. Water soaked through her clothes, plastering her hair to her face. Corvin's arm was steel across her chest, holding her behind the wall's protection. His breath came fast but controlled, his entire body coiled for action. The alarms kept screaming, water kept falling, and Talia's heart thundered in her chest as she realized just how desperately someone wanted either the key she'd found or her dead. Corvin shifted slightly, his free hand pulling a gun from his waistband. The movement brought them closer together, his back shielding her from the kitchen's exposed doorway. She could feel each measured breath he took, count the steady beats of his heart where their bodies pressed together. "Stay behind me," he murmured, voice barely audible above the chaos. "No matter what happens next, stay behind me." The sprinklers sputtered, creating curtains of water that distorted the kitchen beyond. Somewhere in the street, tires squealed. The air stank of cordite and wet plaster and the metallic tang of fear. But pressed against Corvin's back, feeling the lethal readiness in every line of his body, Talia found herself almost calm. He'd saved her on the roof. He'd saved her at the elevator. And now, as water soaked them both and alarms pierced the night, she knew with bone-deep certainty that he would save her again. The concrete at their backs hummed with the building's awakening chaos, other tenants evacuating, distant sirens approaching. But in their pocket of space behind the stairwell wall, time seemed suspended. Water dripped from Corvin's hair onto her shoulder. His gun never wavered from its cover position, and Talia held her breath, waiting for whatever would come next. Sirens wailed closer, their urgent cry mixing with the sprinkler's hiss. Corvin's grip tightened on Talia's arm. "We're not waiting for uniforms," he said, voice clipped. "Service exit, now." They moved through the waterlogged hallway, his body between her and the windows. At the back door, he shrugged out of his suit, jacket, and wrapped it around her shoulders. "Head down. Run straight to the black sedan." The moment he pushed the door open, another shot cracked against the frame. Splinters flew. Talia flinched, but Corvin's hand at her back kept her moving. 20 feet of exposed concrete never felt longer. The car door opened before they reached it. Corvin practically threw her inside, diving in after as the engine roared to life. She landed against leather seats, his jacket tangled around her like a shield. "Clear," the driver called, accelerating smoothly into traffic. In the dim interior lighting, Corvin pulled something from his pocket, a small brass cylinder that caught the passing streetlights. "From this morning's shooter at the penthouse," he said, holding it where she could see. "Custom stamp on the casing. Only one gunsmith does this work, and they exclusively supply Kingsley's people." Talia's hands wouldn't stop shaking. "So it's not random. They really want me dead. Or they want what you found." His eyes met hers. "Either way, you're a target now." She wrapped her arms around herself, feeling the wet fabric of her clothes stick uncomfortably. "Then give me a gun. I should be able to defend myself." "No." His tone allowed no argument. "You're not trained. In panic, you're more likely to shoot yourself or me." Before she could protest, he reached into his breast pocket and pressed something cool into her palm, a heavy steel pen, matte black and perfectly weighted. "Here." His fingers positioned hers around it. "Strike here." He touched her thumb to one end. "Or here, throat, eyes, or groin. It won't stop someone, but it'll buy you seconds to run." The pen felt inadequate against the memory of shattering windows and gunfire, but she gripped it tightly anyway. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere they won't expect." Corvin leaned forward to murmur directions to the driver. They wound through the industrial district, where empty warehouses loomed like sleeping giants. The car finally stopped beside a nondescript building humming with generator noise. "Marco's workshop," Corvin explained as they hurried inside. "He moves it every few months. The power load masks heat signatures and sound." The interior was a maze of servers and screens, cables snaking across the concrete floor like mechanical vines. The hacker, Marco, barely looked up from his workstation, fingers flying across multiple keyboards. "Boss, got the hardware rig ready for that key." Corvin guided Talia through the electronic labyrinth to a small side room. A single space heater fought the chill, its orange coils casting strange shadows. He positioned her away from the door's sightline, then took up station between her and any potential threat. The room felt too small with both of them in it. Talia could smell his cologne mixed with gun oil and wet wool from his jacket. Her own clothes were finally drying, but she couldn't stop shivering. Without comment, Corvin shifted the Tsar heater closer to her. The warm air helped, but it couldn't touch the ice in her spine when she thought about the sniper's bullet missing her by inches. "The Kingsleys," she said softly. "What do they want? Why go through all this trouble for a waitress? That key's valuable enough to kill for." His voice was equally quiet. "Question is what's on it, and why it was left where I'd find it." She rubbed her arms. "Nothing in my life ever mattered before. I was nobody. You matter now." The words came out rough, like they surprised him. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the distant hum of electronics and the space heater's gentle whir. Talia found herself studying his profile in the dim light, the sharp line of his jaw, the careful way he held himself ready even here. "Earlier," she ventured, "you said you learned loyalty the hard way. Was that in prison?" His shoulders tensed slightly. "Before. My father's associates had specific ideas about teaching respect. Prison just reinforced the lesson that trust is earned in blood." Something in his tone made her heart ache. Before she could respond, Marco's voice drifted in from the main room. "Running final decrypt sequence now? Bypassing the last firewall?" Corvin moved to the doorway, one hand straying to his gun. Talia followed, drawn by the tension in his stance. The workshop's screens flickered with cascading code. Marco hunched over his primary terminal, face lit by scrolling numbers. The key sat in a cradle of wires and sensors, looking impossibly small for all the trouble it had caused. Minutes ticked by. Talia's nerves stretched wire-tight. She found herself pressing closer to Corvin's solid presence, taking comfort in the way he automatically adjusted to shield her. The screen suddenly flashed green. Marco's intake of breath was audible in the humming quiet. "I'm in," he whispered. Almost. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. Talia's fingers found the steel pen in her pocket, gripping it like a talisman. Whatever secrets that key held, they had nearly cost her life twice today. Now, finally, they would know why. Corvin's body was a wall of contained tension beside her. She could feel the alertness radiating from him, see the way his eyes tracked every shadow while they waited for Marco's next words. The generators droned on. Code continued its emerald dance across the screens. And in that moment of suspended anticipation, Talia realized she had never felt more alive, or more afraid of what came next. Marco's fingers stilled on the keyboard. "Got it. Full decrypt achieved." Data flooded the screens, columns of numbers, dates, and coded annotations that made Talia's head swim. But Corvin leaned forward, his expression sharpening as he scanned the information. "Kingsley's shadow accounts," he said. "Caymans, Switzerland, Singapore, all funneling through a single source marked Q." Marco nodded, bringing up another window. "There's more. Payment histories? Transaction logs. Wait." Talia stepped closer, recognizing a familiar name. "That's County General, the hospital where my mom—" She swallowed hard. "Those dates match her cancer treatments." Corvin's eyes narrowed as he traced the pattern. Regular payments, precise amounts, spanning years. Birthday deposits, too, every March 15th. The room seemed to tilt beneath Talia's feet. "That's my birthday." "These aren't random." Corvin scrolled through more records. "Someone's been watching over you, someone with deep pockets and Kingsley connections." Talia gripped the edge of the desk, her knuckles white. Q could be a name, an initial. The word caught in her throat. Father. A father who knew where you were. Corvin's voice was gentle but firm. Who paid bills but never showed his face. Hot tears pricked at her eyes, anger or hope. She couldn't tell which. All this time, Mom worked double shifts, took loans she couldn't repay. We lost everything when she died, and he was out there. The ledger explains the Kingsley's interest, Marco interrupted, tapping his screen. These accounts, if they went public, it'd expose their whole laundering network. But if someone had leverage over Q, they could force a trade, Corvin finished. The ledger for his silence. Talia paced the small room, mind racing. So they grabbed me to pressure Q? But why now? Maybe Q's position changed, became more valuable. Corvin watched her movements with careful eyes. Or more vulnerable. His phone buzzed, breaking the tension. He checked the message, jaw tightening. Joey's got eyes on Kingsley's money man, the one who routes their special payments. He'd know who Q is. Talia stopped pacing. Where? Warehouse district, down by the docks. Corvin shook his head before she could speak. No, too dangerous. That's my father they're using as leverage. Talia stepped into his space, chin lifted. My life they tried to end. I'm going. Talia, I'll stay behind you, do exactly what you say. Her eyes held his. But I need to know. Long seconds passed as they stared each other down. Finally, Corvin growled low in his throat. You stay glued to my back. 1 foot out of line and I'm throwing you over my shoulder and leaving. Deal. She was already moving toward the door. Marco, upload that data to a secure server, Corvin ordered. Wipe the key after. Joey's team will meet us there. The night air hit them like a wall of ice as they left the workshop. Fog had crept in from the harbor, turning streetlights into hazy globes and softening the edges of buildings. Their breath came in white puffs as they hurried to the waiting car. Talia slid into the back seat, hyper-aware of Corvin beside her, his body angled to watch both her and the windows. The driver pulled away silently, headlights cutting through the mist. The man we're meeting, Corvin said quietly. Walter Chen. Handles special accounts for the Kingsleys. If anyone knows Q's identity, it's him. Talia nodded, trying to steady her racing pulse. Will he talk? Joey's team has leverage of their own. His hand brushed her knee briefly. We'll get answers. They wound through empty streets, the fog thickening as they neared the water. Warehouses loomed like ghosts in the murk, their metal sides sweating in the damp air. The car's engine was barely a whisper. Talia's mind spun with possibilities. Who was Q? A Kingsley lieutenant? Someone higher up? Had he loved her mother once, or had Talia been an inconvenient accident he paid to keep quiet? The questions burned in her throat. Beside her, Corvin radiated lethal focus. His hand never strayed far from his weapon, eyes constantly scanning their surroundings through the fog. The protective intensity should have frightened her. Instead, it made her feel safer than she had in days. The car slowed, tires crunching on gravel. Through the windshield, Talia could make out the hulking shape of a warehouse, its windows dark except for one faint light high up. The fog wrapped around it like a shroud. Remember, Corvin said softly. Stay close. Stay quiet. Let me handle this. Talia nodded, her fingers finding the steel pen in her pocket. Her past and future waited in that building, wrapped in shadows and secrets. Whatever came next would change everything. The car rolled to a stop, engine cutting off. In the sudden silence, Talia could hear waves lapping against the distant docks and her own heart thundering in her ears. Corvin's hand found hers in the dark, squeezed once, then let go. Ready? She took a deep breath, tasting salt and diesel on the fog-thick air. Ready? The warehouse air hung thick with rust and river damp. Their footsteps echoed off corrugated walls as Corvin led them up metal stairs, past empty pallets and abandoned forklifts. Talia stayed close enough to feel the heat from his back, counting breaths to keep calm. A single flood lamp cut through the gloom ahead, casting harsh shadows across stacked crates. As they rounded the corner, Talia's breath caught. Under that stark light sat Walter Chen, slumped in a folding chair, his white shirt blooming red from collar to sternum. His dead eyes stared at nothing. Don't look, Corvin murmured, but she already had. Papers were stapled across Chen's chest like some twisted art installation, ledger pages fluttering in the draft. Quite a mess, isn't it? Joey's voice drifted from the shadows. He stepped into the light, pistol trained on Corvin's chest, lips curved in what might have been regret. Had to send a message. Kings don't like their books getting aired. Joey. Corvin's voice went flat, dangerous. What did they offer you? Enough to disappear forever. Joey shrugged. Been feeding them little bits for months, building trust. But this? He gestured at Talia with the gun. This was the golden ticket. The girl, the key, and both families bleeding each other dry while I sail away. Talia's fingers closed around the steel pen in her pocket. Her heart hammered against her ribs as Joey's betrayal sank in. He'd helped put her on that roof, knowing what would happen. "The fob," Joey said. "Toss it here, sweetheart. Nice and easy." She pulled the pen free instead, eyes tracking up to where thick cables fed the flood lamp. One clean slice and they'd have darkness. But Joey was watching her too closely, finger tightening on the trigger. "Don't make this messy," he warned. "I'd hate to splatter your daddy's investment all over these walls before he even meets you." "You know who he is?" Talia's voice cracked. "Know enough to make the Kingsleys very interested." Joey's smile widened. "The fob. Now." She reached into her other pocket slowly, made a show of fumbling with shaking hands. The moment Joey's eyes dropped to track the movement, she whipped the pen up and slashed through the power cable. Sparks exploded in a blue-white cascade. Corvin was moving before the light died, a dark blur through the falling sparks. The crack of Joey's shot went wide as they collided. Talia pressed herself against a crate, heart in her throat, as the men crashed and grappled in the dark. The sounds were horrible, meaty impacts, grunts of pain, the skitter of the gun across concrete. A body hit the floor hard. Someone wheezed, then silence, broken only by ragged breathing. "Talia?" Corvin's voice, tight with exertion. "Here." She fumbled her phone out for light. The weak beam found Corvin zip-tying Joey's wrists, knee in the traitor's back. Blood ran from Joey's nose, but his eyes still burned with defiance. "You're both dead," he spat. "Cops are already rolling. Anonymous tip about bodies in a warehouse. Have fun explaining this mess." As if summoned, sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Red and blue strobes began to paint the high windows, reflecting off puddles on the floor. "The stairs," Corvin ordered, hauling Joey up. "Move!" They raced down the metal steps, feet clanging. Behind them, tires screeched on wet pavement. Radio static crackled, car doors slammed. "This way!" Corvin guided them through a maze of containers, one hand locked around Joey's arm, the other gripping Talia's wrist. The fob dug into her palm where she clutched it. A voice on a bullhorn ordered them to exit with hands up. Flashlight beams swept the loading bay behind them. The fog pressed close, promising cover if they could just reach it. Corvin spotted a side door and kicked it open. Cool mist swallowed them as they burst out into the night. Joey stumbled, trying to slow them down, but Corvin dragged him forward without mercy. "Stop, or we'll shoot!" The command echoed off warehouse walls. They sprinted past empty truck bays, boots splashing through puddles. The fog thickened with each step until Talia could barely see 3 feet ahead. Behind them, patrol cars screeched around corners, sirens howling. Talia's lungs burned. Her wet clothes clung and chafed, but she forced herself to keep pace, following Corvin's shadow through the murk. The fob bounced against her fingers with each stride. This tiny thing that had upended her world, that might finally give her answers about the father who'd watched from a distance all these years. If they survived the night. Joey suddenly threw his weight sideways, trying to break free. Corvin's elbow snapped back, catching him in the solar plexus. The traitor folded with a wheeze, but kept moving. The police were spreading out, boots pounding pavement, radios crackling with positions and orders. Light bars strobed through the fog like deadly fireworks. They needed to vanish, and fast. Talia spotted a gap between buildings ahead, barely wide enough for a person, leading toward the water. She squeezed Corvin's arm and pointed. He nodded, angling them toward it. Joey saw their intention and sucked in breath to shout. Corvin's hand clamped over his mouth, cutting off the sound. They hit the alley entrance at full sprint as flashlight beams swept past. Fog rolled in thicker from the harbor, promising concealment if they could just stay ahead of the net closing around them. Talia's world narrowed to the sound of their breathing, the splash of their footsteps, and the weak shape of Corvin's shoulders as he led them into the mist. Behind them, car engines revved and sirens wailed. Red and blue lights painted the fog like blood in water. But the darkness ahead offered escape, if they were fast enough, smart enough, lucky enough to take it. They ran on through the growing murk, 3 shadows being swallowed by the night, while the city's forces gathered at their backs. The elevator pinged softly as they stepped onto the penthouse floor, both exhausted from the night's chaos. A manila envelope propped against Corvin's door caught the first hint of dawn through the windows. Wait. He checked the hallway before approaching it. The return address belonged to Morrison & Associates, Legal Services. Inside was a smaller envelope marked with Talia's name in feminine handwriting that made her breath catch. "Mom," she whispered, recognizing the careful loops. Corvin unlocked the penthouse and led her inside. Talia's hands shook as she broke the seal, unfolding paper that smelled faintly of her mother's perfume. The letter was dated 8 months ago, shortly before the cancer took her. "My dearest Talia," she read aloud, voice trembling. "If you're reading this, I'm gone, and it's time you knew the truth. I've enclosed your original birth certificate. Your father is—" She stopped, the words blurring. There it was in black and white. Father, Quentin Kingsley. The room spun. Talia gripped the kitchen counter, papers crinkling in her fist. Q, the mystery payer. The shadow watching from afar, dropping birthday money like guilty pennies while her mother worked double shifts to afford treatments. You knew. She turned on Corvin, hurt blazing through exhaustion. When you saw those ledger payments, you figured it out. I was just bait to get to him. Corvin's face tightened. I suspected a connection once I saw the pattern, but I didn't know he was your father. Right. Talia laughed bitterly. You just kept me close, used me to flush him out. Was the safe house even compromised, or did you stage that to gain my trust? Everything I've done was to protect you, he said, voice low and controlled. From the moment I pulled you off that roof, the roof he probably had me put on. She stuffed the birth certificate into her pocket. I need air. I need to think. Talia. Corvin blocked her path to the elevator. The building's likely still watched. You can't— Move! When he didn't, she shoved past him. I'm done being a pawn in your war. At least let me send a car? The elevator doors were closing when he reached them. Talia jabbed the lobby button repeatedly, angry tears threatening. The car descended smoothly, numbers ticking down. How many lies? How many angles? Her whole life felt like a chess game she hadn't known she was playing. Her mother's silence, Quentin's distance, Corvin's protection that looked more like calculation with each passing hour. The elevator settled at the lobby with a gentle bump. Talia wiped her eyes, straightened her shoulders, and stepped out. A black SUV idled at the curb. 2 men in suits emerged from the shadows of the portico. Before Talia could retreat, they had her arms. No rough handling, no threats, just efficient, practiced movements as they guided her toward the vehicle. Miss Quinn, one murmured, your father would like a word. The lobby doors burst open. Corvin's voice cut through the pre-dawn quiet. Talia! But the SUV door was already closing, sealing her in tinted silence. The engine purred to life. Through the darkened glass, she saw Corvin sprinting toward them, gun drawn. Too late. The SUV merged smoothly into early traffic, leaving him standing in the street. Talia pressed her palm to the window, birth certificate crumpling in her pocket. The truth that had started all this. In his penthouse command center, Corvin stared at a wall of screens showing traffic camera feeds. His voice was arctic as he spoke into his phone. Lock down every safe house. Call in every marker. I want eyes on all Kingsley properties and known associates. His knuckles whitened on the desk edge. This ends today. The city stirred to life on his screens, unaware of the war about to erupt in its streets. Corvin's reflection watched him from the dark glass. A man whose careful control had finally met its breaking point. Find her, he ordered his assembled lieutenants. Whatever it takes. Dawn painted the sky in shades of fire as his men dispersed, carrying orders that would set the underworld ablaze. In the growing light, Corvin's face was carved from stone, but his eyes burned with something beyond calculation or strategy. The man who'd built his empire on cold logic was gone. In his place stood someone who'd tear the city apart with his bare hands to get her back. His phone buzzed with the first reports coming in, surveillance teams deploying, informants activated, digital traces being combed, the massive machine of his organization pivoting to full war footing with practiced precision. But beneath the tactical updates, all Corvin could see was Talia's face in that final moment. Hurt, betrayal, and underneath it all, a flash of something that looked too much like heartbreak. He'd protected her body, but lost her trust. Kept her alive, but pushed her away. Now she was in the hands of a man who'd treated her existence like a bookkeeping entry for 23 years. The screens flickered with more camera feeds, each one useless. The SUV had vanished into the growing rush-hour traffic, swallowed by the city's awakening arteries. "Sir?" His security chief waited by the door. "All teams are in position. We're ready." Corvin nodded once, eyes never leaving the feeds. "Bring me something I can use." The chief withdrew, leaving him alone with the wall of screens and the weight of every careful plan crumbling to ash. Dawn painted his city gold, but Corvin saw only shadows, places to hide her, places to hurt her, places he'd rip apart until he found her again. The game had changed. The rules were burning. And the man who'd built his reputation on control was about to show the underworld what happened when control finally broke. Corvin's fist connected with the bookkeeper's jaw. Blood sprayed across mahogany desk. "The compound." "Where?" "I don't—" Another hit silenced the protest. 18 hours of this. 18 hours of kicking down doors, emptying clips, and extracting information one broken bone at a time. The sun had set and risen again on his hunt through the city's shadowed corners. 3 stash houses burned, 5 safe garages emptied, a dozen bookies and runners squealing everything they knew about Kingsley's operation. Each lead another breadcrumb, another piece of the puzzle that would lead him to Talia. His phone buzzed constantly, reports from teams combing sectors, surveillance updates, payoffs clearing accounts. Money flowed like water, greasing palms and loosening tongues. Favors called in from a decade of deal-making. The bookkeeper spat blood. "North Compound, that's all I know." Corvin's second verified the intel against their growing map. Another piece, but not enough. Miles away, Talia woke to antiseptic-scented air and floor-to-ceiling windows. The room could have been a luxury hotel suite if not for the steel door and cameras. Outside, winter sunlight sparkled off snow-dusted grounds. The door opened. A man entered, tall, silver-haired, wearing a suit that cost more than her yearly rent. His smile never reached his eyes. "My dear," Quentin Kingsley spread his hands. "We have so much to discuss." Talia stayed seated, spine straight. 23 years wasn't enough time? "Your mother made her choice." He settled into a chair, every movement precise. "I respected that choice while ensuring you both had support. The medical bills, the education fund. Payments." Her voice was ice, like insurance premiums. His smile tightened. "I protected you." "From what?" "From this world. From men like Corvin Hale." Kingsley smoothed his tie. "That butcher would use you as a pawn in his vendetta. I'm offering safety, security, a future without violence." "In exchange for?" "The key, and ending any association with Hale." Talia met his gaze. "The key's been copied." A lie, but her voice held steady. "And if anything happens to me, the ledger goes public." That part was half true. Corvin had mentioned a dead man's switch. Something flickered in Kingsley's eyes. Calculation, maybe respect. "You have your mother's spine." Across town, Corvin kicked in another door. The safe house occupants reached for weapons. His team put them down hard. More intel, more breadcrumbs. Hours bled together. Afternoon shadows lengthened into evening. His phone lit up with a location, a gambling den linked to Kingsley's operation. Inside, 3 enforcers needed convincing before they talked. Corvin's knuckles were raw by the time he finished asking questions. In her glass cage, Talia watched night fall over the compound grounds. Guards changed shifts. Somewhere, a helicopter's blades chopped the air. Arriving or departing, she couldn't tell. The door opened again. One of Kingsley's men, stone-faced. "Mr. Kingsley requires your presence." The office she was led to screamed old money, leather, wood, crystal decanters catching lamplight. Kingsley stood at the window. Dawn transfers arranged. He didn't turn. Helicopter to a secure location until this unpleasantness resolves. You mean until Corvin's dead? Now Kingsley did turn, smile sharp. Crude, but accurate. The roof at first light. Do try to rest. Talia was escorted back to her room. Through the glass, she watched guards patrol with rifles, their breath frosting in the cold. Corvin's rampage continued through the night. Another safe house, another informant. His phone rang, a driver, voice trembling. North compound, the man whispered. Private helipad. They're moving something valuable at dawn. Corvin's grip tightened on the phone. Coordinates. The driver rattled off numbers, babbling about security rotations and access roads. Corvin memorized every detail, already plotting entry points and angles of attack. Dawn was 6 hours away. 6 hours to plan, position, and prepare to tear apart Kingsley's fortress. 6 hours until they tried to fly Talia beyond his reach. His team gathered in an abandoned warehouse, weapons spread across folding tables. Blueprints and satellite images covered one wall. Guard patterns, security systems, response times. Every scrap of intel from 18 hours of violence distilled into an assault plan. The city night pulsed around them, unaware of the storm about to break. Corvin checked his weapons with mechanical precision, each movement controlled despite the rage burning in his chest. 18 hours of hunting. 18 hours of turning over every rock, shaking every tree, following every thread back to this compound hidden in plain sight. 18 hours of imagining what Kingsley might do to the daughter he'd treated as a ledger entry for decades. His phone buzzed one final time. Surveillance confirming helicopter fueling, dawn departure scheduled. The pieces aligned with the driver's intel. 6 hours until sunrise. 6 hours until Kingsley tried to vanish with Talia. 5 hours and 59 minutes until Corvin showed him exactly what happened when someone took what was his. The warehouse hummed with preparations. Weapons checked, comms tested, plans rehearsed. His men moved with the efficiency of predators, ready to unleash hell at his command. Outside, the city slept on, unaware that its underground war was about to explode into daylight. Unaware that two kings were moving to their final confrontation over a queen who refused to be a pawn. In her glass cage, Talia watched the stars wheel overhead, counting the hours until dawn. In his warehouse command center, Corvin did the same, each minute bringing them closer to the moment that would change everything. The city slept under a bruised sky as 3 black SUVs ghosted along empty streets. In the lead vehicle, Corvin checked his watch. 90 minutes until sunrise. The convoy curved toward the riverfront, headlights off, engines purring low. Behind him, zip-tied in the trunk of the last vehicle, his former second-in-command shifted against the spare tire. They'd dragged him out at each planning stop, letting fear and discomfort loosen his tongue. The man knew Kingsley's compound. He'd helped plan Talia's abduction. The SUVs stopped 2 blocks from the target. Corvin's men deployed with practiced silence, checking weapons and comms. He popped the trunk. Last chance, Corvin said, hauling the traitor up by his collar. Full layout, every guard post. The man's face was slick with sweat. Side gate, northwest corner, 2-man rotation every 15 minutes. Service tunnel entrance behind the generator housing. His bound hands sketched patterns in the air. Cameras have blind spots during shift change. I can show you. Draw it. They spread a blueprint across the SUV's hood. The traitor marked positions with shaking fingers. Guard posts, camera angles, access points. Corvin memorized each detail, comparing them against intel from other sources. Get me inside, Corvin said, and maybe you walk away. Hope flickered in the traitor's eyes. A lie, but useful. Inside the compound, Talia paced her glass cage. The display case she'd accidentally knocked over during dinner provided a sharp shard, now hidden in her sleeve. The zip ties binding her wrists were already fraying. She studied the sprinkler heads dotting the ceiling, remembering the chaos they'd caused at the safe house. Water and confusion, a combination that had worked before. Guards changed shifts in the corridor. Through the glass, she tracked their movements, counting seconds between rounds. The night sky was lightening at the edges. Outside, Corvin's team moved into position. The traitor stumbled toward the side gate, hands raised, mumbling about making a deal. Guards emerged from the shadows, weapons trained. Perfect distraction. Corvin slipped through the service tunnel while gunfire erupted at the gate. The underground passage was tight, forcing him to crouch walk past humming pipes. His mental map placed him below the main building's west wing. Up in her cage, Talia heard distant shots. She wedged the glass shard into the zip tie's locking mechanism and worked it back and forth. The plastic slowly yielded. 3 floors below, Corvin emerged from the tunnel into a maintenance room. He checked his watch. 60 minutes until dawn. Voices approached in the hallway. He pressed against the wall, letting 2 guards pass. The zip tie snapped. Talia flexed her wrists, eyeing the fire alarm panel near her door. 1 guard remained in the corridor, scrolling through his phone. She took a deep breath and slammed the glass shard into the panel. Sirens screamed. Sprinklers burst to life, drenching everything in seconds. Emergency lights strobed through the cascading water as guards shouted in confusion. Corvin heard the alarms and smiled. "That's my girl." He moved fast through the chaos, neutralizing confused guards with brutal efficiency. Water plastered his clothes to his skin as he climbed the emergency stairs. 3rd floor, then 4th. Talia slipped into the corridor, nearly invisible in the artificial fog created by sprinklers and emergency lights. A guard emerged from the mist. She ducked into a doorway as he passed. More gunfire outside. Corvin's team pushing through the main gate now that defenses were scattered. Radio chatter crackled with panic and contradicting orders. Corvin reached the top floor, leaving unconscious bodies in his wake. The water made everything treacherous. Marble floors turned to ice, visibility reduced to arm's length. He rounded a corner and found Talia pressed against a wall, soaked and shivering. Relief hit him like a physical force. He shrugged out of his spare jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders. "Cutting it close," she said, voice barely audible above the alarms. Traffic was hell. A door slammed somewhere ahead. Footsteps pounded toward them, multiple sets, moving fast. "Time to go," Corvin said, but Kingsley appeared through the mist like a ghost, flanked by guards. The old man's perfect suit was ruined, his composure cracking. He lunged forward and seized Talia's wrist before either could react. "This ends now!" Kingsley snarled, dragging her toward the roof access. Guards opened fire, forcing Corvin into cover. He returned shots, dropping 2, but more replaced them. The stairwell became a killing ground as Kingsley hauled Talia up the steps. Water drummed on steel and concrete. Blood swirled pink in the puddles. Corvin reloaded, hearing the roof door slam open above. Dawn painted the clouds crimson as Kingsley burst onto the helipad, Talia stumbling behind him. The helicopter's blades were already spinning, drowning out the dying alarms below. Wind screamed across the helipad, whipping Talia's wet hair against her face. The same bitter height, the same deadly edge where everything began. But this time, she wasn't the one hanging over oblivion. Kingsley's perfect suit dripped river water, his silver hair plastered to his skull. The helicopter's blades chopped through Dawn's crimson light, creating a strobing hellscape of shadows and mist. "Stop!" His voice carried that cultured accent even now, the gun steady in his manicured hands as he aimed at Corvin's chest. "One more step, and I'll paint this roof with you." Talia moved without thinking, placing herself between them. Water from the sprinklers below still trickled down her neck, soaking through the jacket Corvin had given her. "You can't," she said, loud enough to carry over the wind and rotors. "The ledger goes public if either of them dies. I made sure of it." It wasn't entirely true. She hadn't had time to set up anything that sophisticated. But Kingsley's slight flinch told her the bluff landed. "You're lying." Kingsley's fingers tightened on the trigger. "You wouldn't risk exposing yourself." "Try me." Talia lifted her chin. "I grew up with nothing. You think I care about reputation?" Corvin remained absolutely still behind her, but she felt his presence like a wall of heat against her back. His gun hadn't wavered from Kingsley, but now it lowered fraction by fraction. "A trade," Corvin called out, voice carved from ice. "The ledger stays buried, permanently. In exchange, Talia walks away free. No crowns, no claims. Her choice, her life." The helicopter pilot was watching through the windscreen, hands frozen on the controls. Below, sirens wailed closer through the pre-dawn streets. They were running out of time. You expect me to believe you'd let her go? Kingsley's laugh was bitter. A man like you? A man like me knows when he's beat. Corvin's weapon dropped completely. But a father like you never learned that lesson, did you? Something twisted in Kingsley's expression. Rage and shame tangled into something toxic. He lunged forward, gun swinging toward Corvin's exposed chest. Talia saw it happening as if in slow motion. Corvin's body tensing to move, Kingsley's finger tightening. The muzzle flashed bright against the bloody sky. The shot cracked across the roof like thunder. Kingsley stumbled, thrown off balance by his own desperate lunge. His polished shoes skidded on the wet concrete. One heel caught the roof's edge, his arms pinwheeled, gun clattering away. Then gravity took him. The safety cable caught him exactly as it had caught Talia that first night. The irony wasn't lost on her as she watched him dangle, expensive suit shredding against the building's face. "Help!" The commanding tone had vanished from his voice. Now he just sounded old and afraid. "Talia, please." She moved to the edge, ignoring Corvin's sharp intake of breath behind her. Kingsley's eyes met hers, the same deep brown as her own, the same stubborn set to the jaw. Looking at him was like seeing a warped mirror of her future if she let pride curdle into poison. "Give me your hand," she said, extending her own. Kingsley stared up at her. For a moment, something like recognition flickered in his gaze, not of her as his daughter, but of himself in her features. The sharp nose, the determined mouth, the steel in her spine that wouldn't let her watch even him fall. His fingers twitched toward hers, then his face hardened into marble once more. He let go. Talia stumbled back from the edge, a scream locked behind her teeth. Corvin's arms wrapped around her from behind, solid and warm despite his soaked clothes. She turned and buried her face against his chest, feeling his heart hammer against her cheek. The helicopter's blades were still spinning uselessly, creating a hurricane of wind and noise. The pilot struggled with the controls, but the helipad's hydraulic locks remained firmly engaged, courtesy of the encrypted fob she'd jammed into the mechanism during the chaos. Sirens painted the compound's walls in strobing red and blue. Police cars poured through the gates, followed by tactical vehicles and ambulances. The night was over. Corvin's phone vibrated. He checked it one-handed, keeping her tucked against him with the other. "My people are standing down," he murmured against her hair. "No more blood tonight." Talia nodded, unable to form words yet. Below them, radios crackled with official voices. Boots thundered on stairs. The sun crept higher, burning away the crimson dawn into simple daylight. "I couldn't save him," she whispered finally. "He didn't want to be saved." Corvin's arms tightened. Some men would rather fall than admit they were wrong. The helicopter powered down, blades slowing to a visible spin. Wind swept the roof clean of mist, revealing spent shell casings glinting like coins against the concrete. Evidence of how close they'd all come to joining Kingsley in the river. Talia shivered, and not from the cold. What happens now? Now we wait. Corvin's thumb traced circles on her shoulder. Let the uniforms do their jobs. Let the families sort out succession. And then... Then you decide. His voice was carefully neutral. Stay or go. Your choice, like I promised him. Talia closed her eyes, feeling the phantom sensation of hanging over that first edge, of strong hands pulling her to safety, of all the edges they'd faced since, together. The roof access door burst open, disgorging SWAT teams with raised weapons. Corvin's arms loosened, ready to let her step away if she chose. She stayed exactly where she was. The autumn breeze ruffled the modest ribbon stretched across the clinic's entrance. Talia's hands trembled slightly as she lifted the oversized scissors, their chrome surface reflecting the small crowd gathered on the sidewalk. "You've got this," Corvin murmured from beside her, his shoulder brushing hers in quiet support. The clinic's fresh paint gleamed in the morning light, soft blue instead of institutional white, with her mother's name inscribed in elegant letters above the door. The Quinn Memorial Health Center. Simple. Honest. Like the woman who'd worked extra shifts to keep Talia in school, never breathing a word about the silent benefactor who'd eased their worst burdens. The scissors snicked through ribbon. Applause rippled through the crowd, mostly neighborhood folks who remembered the old clinic, plus a few carefully vetted reporters. No trace remained of the underground war that had reshaped the city's criminal landscape these past weeks. Inside, everything was new. Clean floors, updated equipment, private consultation rooms with actual soundproofing. The Foundation's bank accounts, fed by converted assets from Corvin's less savory ventures, would keep it running for decades. "Your mother would be proud," said Mrs. Chen, the elderly pharmacist who'd worked here since Talia was small. She patted Talia's hand. "She always said you'd do great things." Talia swallowed hard. "I had help." Her gaze found Corvin across the room, watching her with that intensity that still made her breath catch. He'd stripped his empire down to bones these past weeks, selling off the bloody pieces to rivals hungry for territory. The legitimate businesses remained: real estate, imports, private security, protected now by reputation more than violence. The depositions had been brutal. Carefully selected evidence implicated key outfit players while protecting Talia's privacy. Shell companies collapsed. Offshore accounts emptied. By the time the dust settled, the old order was gone. Later, after the last guest left and the cleaning crew finished, Talia found Corvin in her new office, studying the framed photo of her mother on the wall. "Having second thoughts?" she asked. He turned, expression softening. "About you? Never. About all of this." She gestured at the clinic, the Foundation paperwork on her desk. "It's a lot to give up." "I'm not giving up anything." His hands settled on her waist, drawing her close. "I'm choosing something better." The drive home was quiet, streetlights painting gold stripes across the dashboard. Talia watched the city scroll past, her city now, in a way she was still learning to accept. The penthouse garage felt different too, safer since Corvin had upgraded every system. Dawn was breaking as they stepped into the garden terrace where it had all begun. The parapet had been reinforced, the warning long since scrubbed away. New planters lined the walls, herbs and flowers bringing life to the concrete. Corvin's hands were steady as he pulled the small box from his pocket, but Talia saw the vulnerability in his eyes as he opened it. The ring was simple platinum, no flashy stones to snag or scratch, practical like them. "I'm not offering a cage," he said quietly. "Just a promise. Equal partners, no locks between us. Your terms." Talia's laugh was shaky, relief and joy tangling in her throat. "Yes." The ring slid onto her finger, warm from his pocket. Perfect fit, like he'd measured while she slept. Knowing him, he probably had. They made breakfast together in the kitchen, moving around each other with practiced ease. The bullet hole in the tile had been repaired, but sometimes Talia still traced the spot with her fingertips, remembering how close they'd come to losing everything. "We should visit Miller's tonight," she said, buttering toast. "Let everyone know I'm okay. Start fresh." Corvin nodded, sliding an omelet onto her plate. After closing? Fewer witnesses that way. Still thinking like a criminal? Still thinking like someone who wants to protect what's his. He paused. Hours. The sun climbed higher as they ate, painting the city in shades of gold. From up here, you couldn't see the scars of the war they'd survived, the raided warehouses, the burned safe houses, the empty offices where the outfit's power had crumbled. Talia leaned back against Corvin's chest as they watched the light spread across the skyline. His arms wrapped around her waist, chin resting on her shoulder. The ring caught the sunlight, throwing tiny rainbows across their joined hands. "Happy?" he asked softly. She thought about the clinic waiting below, about honest work and clean money, and a future built on choice instead of fear. About the man who'd pulled her from the edge and then let her choose to stay. "Yes," she said. "I'm home." The city stirred to life beneath them, traffic building as another day began. But up here, in their reclaimed sanctuary, peace settled like morning dew. No more shadows, no more secrets, just the sunrise, and the promise of tomorrow, and the quiet certainty that they'd face it together.